Hey, this is Joe at graybenchelec. Welcome back to the pedal teardown series where I take apart new and interesting pedals and show you what's going on inside. Today we're taking apart the Works Blue Tube. Alright, so this is the Blue Tube Real Tube Enhancer. This one was made in May of 1999. There have been several versions of the Real Tube pedals over the years. They're all designed by, I guess, this person here, B.K. Butler. The more popular version of this pedal is the Tube Driver. It's a black enclosure with blue lettering. This one's not as common. The Tube Driver has more gain, more distortion on tap. This one's a more subtle kind of blues overdrive sort of thing. From what I heard in sound tests and trying this pedal out, this one's still got plenty of gain on it. So I know looking at the schematics, which we'll do in a second, there's not a ton of difference between the two pedals, the Blue Tube and the Tube Driver. We're gonna crack this one open today and have a look. This isn't the first tube-based pedal we've had on the channel. We had a Kingsley pedal earlier on. This is an older one though. Like I said, this one's from 1999. And tube-based pedals have been around even much earlier than that. Electro-Harmonix had pedals in the 70s. They were based on the on tubes inside, vacuum tubes. They tend not to be that popular because they have stricter power needs and they generally are not very pedal board friendly. They tend to be a more niche thing, but they have been around for decades, and the Real Tube series is just another example. So on the external here, we have a folded steel enclosure. There are some vents on the side of the steel enclosure for the vacuum tube, which is going to get hot. Those vents appear on either side. We do have a captive, meaning non-removable, power cable, 3-prong power cable. I'm not sure if this was stock or if this was a modification afterwards. Probably the latter, considering 99. The foot switch is not a typical latching like 3-pole double throw foot switch. It's going to be, it feels just like a standard like single pole double throw, possibly momentary. So we're expecting some circuitry inside, either a relay or probably more in this era, some sort of IC based switching circuit or JFET based like Boss pedals or Ibanez pedals. We have 5 controls on the top: output and drive, high, mid, and low. The enclosure is painted blue, and we have like a yellowish silk screen or UV print, some sort of text. The potentiometers are interesting there. They feel like standard potentiometers, but they also kind of feel like rotary encoders in the sense that they have little steps along the way. It's hard to describe if you haven't felt it, but they have little click positions. It's not just a smooth rotation, but they are standard potentiometers, so this is just a mechanical thing happening inside the potentiometer. Input and output jacks on the top side, along with the power cable. On the bottom, we have the serial number sticker and the date of manufacture, in this case specifically May 5th, 1999. 4 rubber feet with the screws that hold the enclosure together. A couple screws on the bottom side that mount the transformer. We'll look at that in a sec. And that is pretty much it for the exterior. Let's go ahead and crack it open. Alright, so here's the inside of the Blue Tube. Getting it out, I've decided not to go for it. The potentiometers are PC mounted, and the captive power cable here has the strain relief here. The safety ground is coming over here to the jack, and the other connections here are made with these little tie points, crimp tie points, and so taking these apart, I'd have to have new tie crimps or something, and it would take away from originality. So we're going to leave this in its enclosure. We can pretty much see everything we need to see. Here's our vacuum tube, of course. It's a standard 12AX7. I don't see any manufacturer marks on it, but it looks like one of the Chinese vacuum tubes, 12AX7s. You can see inside the PCB here, we have the green Panasonic film caps. The resistors are carbon comp, looks like 1/4 watt. The electrolytic capacitors are marked Wendell. You can maybe see the manufacturer marking there, Wendell. I'm not familiar with that company. We have some Siliconics J112s here. These might be part of the switching circuit, bringing the pedal in and out of bypass by turning on or off JFETs. We have a socketed TLO72 here. That's nice to have sockets just in case these crap to bed. You can just switch them out real easy. You don't have to desolder anything. There is another op amp hidden down inside there as well. It might be hard to see down in there, and that's another TLO72. So we have 2 TL072 dual op amps. I said in the intro, but the Blue Tube and the Tube Driver are very similar, just a couple component differences. And in fact, the PCB is marked RT901 down in here. I don't know if you can see it. Maybe you can, just in the bottom where my pointer is going there, RT901, which is actually the part number for the Tube Driver, and then there's a /903, so they actually use the same PCB. The tube here is being sort of held in place by a bit of hot glue. I'm not sure if this is original or not, nor do I know if this is an original tube. I bought this pedal used. If it is, and if the glue is original, then it's just a little bit of rattle protection to make sure that the tube doesn't work itself out as it's being shipped or tossed around in a gig bag, whatever. Depending on the heat that's generated by this tube, the hot glue may start to lose its strength over time through heat and cool cycles. So that might be something to check to make sure that's still doing its job. You could also just be diligent about making sure your tube is fully pushed into the PCB mounted socket here and just do away with the glue entirely. 1/4 inch jacks appear to be the plastic enclosed jacks like the Switchcraft 112BX, which is the stereo version or whatever the mono version is as well. I pointed out earlier the safety ground's here connected to the ground lug, or maybe the ring lug actually, on the output jack. I don't think this is ideal. Ideally, your safety ground should be connected to its own point in the enclosure. So that would be like another screw terminal somewhere, maybe down here on the face, which would be maybe difficult because then it would be obscuring the graphics or whatever. But just somewhere in the area, or maybe even just a lug coming off of this, it wouldn't be ideal. But connecting here, if this little tab were to break off from the 1/4 inch jack here, then all of a sudden your safety ground's not connected anymore. So I think this would be better off if it was connected to at least its own connection somewhere, ideally, or a solder lug coming off the screw mount for the transformer here. Transformer, by the way, it's a step-down voltage transformer, so it's bringing in the 120-ish from the wall and spitting out about 12 volts. It's going to be a little bit higher because we're barely going to be pulling any current from the transformer, so it's more like 14 volts as it goes through the circuit, but it's a 12-volt step-down transformer. Flip switch here, you see it's a single pole, single throw momentary switch, and it works similar to the way a Boss or an Ibanez pedal would, where you make the connection and that allows the JFETs to open up and pass signal through the circuit, or you hit it and it passes it around the circuit of the pedal. The potentiometers are manufactured I don't recognize. They're similar to Alpha 16 mil pots, but they have a different logo. It sort of looks like, you can imagine, like, it kind of looks like Saturn, where it's like a round planet with rings around it, but I don't recognize that logo. And we also have a couple LEDs. Red LED here indicates that the overdrive circuit is in, and green, I believe, indicates just that the pedal's receiving power. So that is pretty much it for the inside of the Blue Tube here from TubeWorks. Let's go ahead and have a quick look at the schematic for the Blue Tube and the tube driver. All right, I have to apologize. I've been saying tube driver, which actually isn't correct. This pedal, the Blue Tube, and the TubeWorks real tube are actually the two circuits that are very similar. They also look very similar. The real tube is black with the yellow lettering. The Blue Tube is blue with yellow lettering. They're very similar pedals. I have both the schematics here. The Blue Tube, this is the pedal we actually have on the bench here. You can see we have a couple op-amp stages here. This one, first one's just a buffer. We have no resistance in the feedback loop, so this is going to be unity gain. Over here we have another drive circuit. This is going to add amplification because we have resistance in that feedback loop. A 500K pot, that's your drive pot. You can see the foot switch circuitry here. It's just a single pole, single throw, momentary switch. Apologies for the kind of not so great schematic drawing here. But we have an op amp that's handling that foot switch circuit. The red and green LEDs are down here, and you can see the JFETs coming off. We have the buffer here. So the buffer is always in circuit, so this would be a buffered bypass pedal. A JFET here, and then an output JFET here, and it just, when your pedal's in bypass, the JFET's not going to allow audio to go through the distortion circuit here. It's just going to go straight through the JFET back out to the output. Here's our tube. It's just two cascading gain stages. They are capacitor coupled together. They share a common cathode resistor, 2.2K, and they have this voltage divider here, sort of like a fixed volume control with a 220K resistor and a 47K resistor. We can also see, I'm going to actually point it on the second schematic, it's a little easier to see. This is the schematic for the real tube, which is a slightly more popular version. We have our power coming in, and we're creating two separate supplies. We have a rectification diode here with a cathode pointing to the secondary of the transformer and one pointing away. And that's going to give us a positive and negative power supply, or a bipolar power supply. And we can see that mentioned up here on all the amplification stages, that we have our positive voltage for the positive input on the op amp and a negative voltage for the negative voltage input. Over here as well, positive voltage in. This is a inverting op amp. It's going into the inverting input on the op amp, and the positive is grounded. And then over here for the tube, we have our positive voltage up here coming to the plates, and our negative voltage down here to the grid, or to the cathode of the first stage. And then the bypass capacitor is actually just shorted to ground here, not the negative potential. And then our output here, TB0, comes over to the tone control. Pretty Fender-ish looking tone control, or Fender Marshall style, the stacked tone control. Out of the tone control into the output potentiometer. And the real tube pedal here is a 500K. Actually, no, that's consistent actually with both pedals. They're both 500K output pots. But the high control is a 500K on the real tube pedal, whereas a 100K on the... There's also an extra resistor here after the second op amp stage, a 100K resistor in series with the output of the op amp on the Blue Tube, whereas that resistor is missing from the real tube. And that voltage divider between the two tubes is different as well. It's just a half voltage divider here, two 10K resistors, where on the Blue Tube pedal here, there's a greater voltage reduction. We're going to be dropping more voltage across that bigger 220K versus the 47K. So this is essentially like a volume control set to half approximately for a linear volume control. And this would be more like, I don't know, 3/4 of the way turned down for a linear control between the two tubes here. So there's the two schematics for the TubeWorks real tube and Blue Tube pedals. Let's go ahead and put the pedal back together. All right, that was a teardown of the TubeWorks Blue Tube. If you have any questions or recommendations for a pedal you want to see on an upcoming teardown episode, let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, I'd appreciate you hitting the like button and subscribing. I'm Joe from graybenchelec. Thank you for watching.